The phone rang at 2:17 a.m., cutting through my deep sleep like a knife through silence. I fumbled around my nightstand, knocking over an empty coffee mug before finding my cell phone. The screen showed an unknown number, but something in my gut told me to answer. Is this Jordan Miller? The voice was professional, clinical. This is Nurse Patricia from St. Mary's Hospital Emergency Department. We have your grandmother, Dorothy Miller, here. She was brought in by ambulance about 30 minutes ago. My heart stopped. Grandma Dorothy. The woman who raised me when my parents decided their careers were more important than a confused, grieving child. The woman who taught me to ride a bike, helped with homework, and never missed a single school play or graduation. What happened? I managed to ask, already reaching for my clothes. She had a severe cardiac event. You're listed as her emergency contact. We need you here as soon as possible. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and raced through the empty streets of downtown Chicago. The city looked different at this hour, stripped of its usual chaos, leaving only the harsh glow of streetlights and the occasional late-night diner. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, trying not to think about what I might find when I got there. St. Mary's Hospital loomed before me like a fortress of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. I parked haphazardly and ran through the automatic doors of the emergency department. The waiting room was a mix of worried families, homeless individuals seeking shelter, and the occasional drunk sleeping it off in a plastic chair. I'm here for Dorothy Miller, I told the receptionist, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. Room 7. Through those doors, turn right. I found the room and stopped cold at the doorway. There was Grandma Dorothy, looking so small and fragile on that hospital bed, connected to more wires and machines than I could count. Her silver hair was disheveled, and her usually bright blue eyes were closed. The steady beep of the heart monitor was both reassuring and terrifying. Jordan? A voice behind me made me turn. It was Dr. Williams, a tall black woman with graying temples and an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. I'm glad you're here. Your grandmother is stable for now, but we need to discuss her condition. We stepped into a small consultation room across the hall. The doctor's expression was serious but not hopeless. Dorothy suffered a massive heart attack. We've managed to stabilize her, but she needs immediate surgery. There's a significant blockage in her left anterior descending artery. Without intervention, she likely won't survive the next 24 hours. The words hit me like a physical blow. What kind of surgery? Emergency cardiac catheterization and possibly bypass surgery depending on what we find. It's risky given her age and the severity of the blockage, but it's her only chance. Do whatever you need to do, I said without hesitation. Dr. Williams nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. Your grandmother's insurance situation is complicated. She'll need authorization for the procedure, and as her next of kin and power of attorney holder, you'll need to sign the consent forms. But Jordan, there's another issue. What do you mean? Your parents are on their way. They were contacted as well, and from what I understand, there might be some disagreement about the course of treatment. My stomach dropped. My parents. I hadn't spoken to them in over 2 years, not since the disaster that was my college graduation when they spent the entire dinner criticizing my choice to become a social worker instead of following them into their prestigious law firm. They're coming here? They should arrive within the hour. They drove down from Milwaukee as soon as they heard. I slumped back in the chair. Of all the times for them to show up, it had to be now when Grandma Dorothy needed me the most. I knew exactly what would happen. They'd waltz in with their expensive clothes and condescending attitudes, take control of the situation, and somehow make this about them. Doctor, I need you to understand something. My grandmother raised me. She's been more of a parent to me than they ever were. Whatever decisions need to be made, I want what's best for her, not what's convenient for my parents. Dr. Williams studied my face carefully. I understand your concern, Jordan. Family dynamics can be challenging during medical crises. But I need you to know that as her designated power of attorney, you do have the legal authority to make medical decisions on her behalf if she's unable to do so herself. She made me her power of attorney? Yes, about 3 years ago. It's all documented in her medical records. A wave of emotion crashed over me. Even when I didn't know it, Grandma Dorothy had been looking out for me, trusting me with the most important decisions of her life. 3 years ago was right around the time my parents had cut me off financially for refusing to change my major to pre-law. We walked back to her room and I pulled a chair up next to her bed. Her hand felt cold and small in mine, but I could feel the strength that had always been there, even now when she was fighting for her life. I'm here, Grandma, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. The next 45 minutes passed in a blur of medical tests, consultations, and preparations for surgery. Dr. Williams explained that they needed to act quickly, but they were waiting for the surgical team to be fully prepared. Every minute that passed felt like an hour. Then I heard them before I saw them. My mother's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp and commanding, demanding answers from every nurse and doctor she encountered. Where is she? Where is Dorothy Miller? I'm her daughter-in-law, and I demand to know what's being done. My father's voice followed, equally demanding. This is unacceptable. We should have been called immediately. Where is the attending physician? I stood up slowly, steeling myself for what was about to happen. Through the doorway, I could see them approaching, my mother in a perfectly pressed pantsuit despite the early hour, my father in his expensive wool coat, both of them looking like they were heading to a board meeting rather than a family emergency. Jordan. My mother's voice was cold as she entered the room. What are you doing here? Grandma Dorothy is my emergency contact. I've been here since she was brought in. My father barely glanced at me, his attention focused on the monitors and medical equipment. What's her condition? Have you spoken to the doctors? What's the treatment plan? She needs emergency surgery, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Dr. Williams says it's her only chance. Dr. Williams? My mother's tone was skeptical. We need to speak to the head of cardiology. Someone with real expertise. Dr. Williams is the head of emergency cardiac surgery, I said firmly. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway. She took in the scene quickly, her experienced eyes noting the tension in the room. You must be Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I'm Dr. Williams. I've been caring for Dorothy since she arrived. My father immediately stepped forward, extending his hand. Richard Miller, attorney at law. This is my wife, Patricia. We need to discuss our mother's treatment options immediately. Of course. Perhaps we should step into the consultation room. As we moved into the small room again, I could feel the familiar dynamic settling over us like a suffocating blanket. My parents took the seats closest to the doctor, effectively pushing me to the side, literally and figuratively. Doctor, we need to understand all the options, my mother began. What are the risks of surgery at her age? What's the success rate? What about alternative treatments? Dr. Williams patiently explained everything she had already told me, but I could see my parents' skepticism growing with every word. The truth is, my father said when she finished, Dorothy is 84 years old. The quality of life after such an invasive surgery, the recovery time, the potential complications. Maybe it's time to consider comfort care instead. I felt like I'd been slapped. Comfort care? You mean just letting her die? Jordan, be realistic, my mother snapped. She's had a good life. Sometimes the kindest thing is to avoid prolonging suffering. She's not suffering. She's unconscious. And an hour ago, you didn't even know she was here. That's enough, my father's voice rose. You're too emotional to make rational decisions. This requires clear thinking, not sentiment. Clear thinking? I stood up, anger flooding through me. You mean the kind of clear thinking that kept you away for the past 2 years? The kind of clear thinking that made you miss her 84th birthday last month? We had commitments, my mother said coldly. Some of us have responsibilities beyond emotional dramatics. Jordan, my father's voice took on the patronizing tone I knew so well, you're useless in this situation. You don't understand the medical complexities, the financial implications, the legal ramifications. Leave this to the adults. The word hit me like a physical blow. Useless. The same word they'd used when I chose social work over law. The same word they'd used when I couldn't afford to pay for graduate school without their help. The same word that had echoed in my head for years, making me doubt every decision I'd ever made. But then I thought about Grandma Dorothy. I thought about all the times she told me I was capable, intelligent, caring. I thought about how she'd supported my dreams when no one else would. You're wrong, I said quietly, but my voice was growing stronger. I understand more than you think. Dr. Williams had been watching this exchange with professional calm, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I think we need to focus on what's best for Dorothy. The surgery needs to happen soon if we're going to proceed. We're not proceeding, my father said firmly. We've decided that comfort care is the most appropriate option. Actually, Dr. Williams said carefully, that decision isn't yours to make. My parents looked at her in confusion. I beg your pardon, my mother said. Dorothy Miller designated Jordan as her healthcare power of attorney 3 years ago. Jordan is the person legally authorized to make medical decisions on her behalf. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of the hospital. My parents stared at Dr. Williams, then at me, their faces showing a mixture of shock and disbelief. "That's impossible," my father stammered. "We're her next of kin. We're her family." "Jordan is also family," Dr. Williams replied calmly. "And Jordan is the person Dorothy chose to trust with these decisions." I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I had real power in a situation involving my parents. But more importantly, I had the responsibility to honor Grandma Dorothy's wishes and fight for her life. "Schedule the surgery," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Do everything you can to save her." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked at me as if they were seeing me for the first time, and maybe they were. The useless child they dismissed had just become the most important person in the room. Dr. Williams nodded. "I'll prepare the surgical team. Jordan, I'll need you to sign the consent forms." As she left the room, my parents and I faced each other across a divide that felt wider than ever before. But for the first time in my life, I was standing on solid ground. The consultation room felt smaller now, the three of us locked in a triangle of tension that seemed to suck the air out of the space. My parents sat in their chairs like judges at a tribunal, their faces masks of controlled fury and disbelief. "This is ridiculous," my mother finally said, her voice tight with barely contained anger. "Dorothy was clearly not in her right mind when she made this decision. She's 84 years old, Jordan. People that age make poor choices all the time." "She was perfectly lucid 3 years ago," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "More lucid than either of you have been about her needs." My father leaned forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "You manipulated her. You took advantage of an elderly woman's confusion and loneliness to gain control of her affairs." The accusation hit me like a punch to the gut, not because it was true, but because it revealed exactly what they thought of me. Even now, faced with evidence that Grandma Dorothy had chosen me, they couldn't accept that she might have had good reasons. "I didn't even know she had made me her power of attorney until 20 minutes ago," I said. "But I'm not surprised she did it. Do you know when the last time either of you visited her was?" They exchanged glances, and I could see the uncomfortable realization in their eyes. "Christmas," my mother said defensively. "We saw her at Christmas. For 2 hours. You stayed for 2 hours, complained about the traffic, criticized her cooking, and left early because you had dinner plans with the Hendersons. We have social obligations. She's your social obligation." The words came out louder than I intended, and I saw a nurse glance through the doorway. I lowered my voice but kept the intensity. "She's family. She raised me when you were too busy building your careers. She was there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every disappointment. Including the disappointment of having parents who cared more about their reputation than their child." My father's face darkened. "That's enough. You always were ungrateful for everything we provided. The house, the education, the opportunities. The house where I spent most of my time alone because you were at the office. The education you threatened to take away if I didn't choose the career you wanted. The opportunities that came with so many strings attached they felt more like chains. Jordan." My mother's voice took on the fake sweetness she used when she wanted to manipulate someone. "I know you're upset, but you're not thinking clearly. Surgery at Dorothy's age is incredibly risky. The recovery would be brutal. She could have complications, infections, cognitive decline. Is that really what you want for her?" For a moment, doubt crept in. What if they were right? What if I was being selfish, trying to keep her alive just because I couldn't bear to lose her? But then I remembered last month's visit to her apartment. She had been gardening on her tiny balcony, humming an old song while she repotted her African violets. When she saw me, her face had lit up with genuine joy. "Jordan. Perfect timing. I was just thinking about making my famous chocolate chip cookies. You know, the ones with the secret ingredient." We had spent the afternoon baking together, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about the book club she had joined, the new friends she'd made at the senior center, her plans to take a painting class. At 84, she was still planning for the future, still finding joy in small moments. "Yes," I said firmly. "That's what I want for her. I want her to have a chance at more afternoons like that." "Like what?" my father asked impatiently. I realized I had been lost in the memory. "Nothing you would understand." Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway again. "Jordan? I need those consent forms signed. We're ready to take Dorothy into surgery." "Wait," my mother stood up quickly. "Doctor, surely you can see that this young man is not equipped to make such a momentous decision. He's letting his emotions cloud his judgment. Dr. Williams looked at my mother with the kind of professional patience that I recognized from my own work with difficult clients. Mrs. Miller, I understand this is a difficult situation for your family. But legally and ethically, Jordan is Dorothy's designated decision maker. He's also been here since she was admitted, asking thoughtful questions about her care and prognosis. But he's just a social worker, my father interjected as if my profession somehow disqualified me from having a brain. Actually, Dr. Williams said, social workers often have excellent insight into medical decision-making because they understand the human side of healthcare. Jordan has asked me about Dorothy's quality of life after surgery, her support system, her personal values. Those are exactly the right questions. I felt a small surge of pride. In my work, I helped families navigate complex systems and make difficult decisions every day. I knew how to ask the right questions, how to weigh options, how to advocate for the people who counted on me. The consent forms, I said to Dr. Williams. She handed me a clipboard with several pages of legal documents. As I began to read through them, my father made one last attempt to regain control. Jordan, if you sign those papers and something goes wrong, it will be on your head. If she dies on the operating table, if she suffers complications, if she never recovers fully, you'll have to live with that responsibility for the rest of your life. His words were designed to paralyze me with fear and guilt, the same tactics he'd used when I was a child to keep me in line. But I wasn't a child anymore, and the person lying in that hospital bed had taught me something my parents never had, that love sometimes means taking risks. If I don't sign these papers and she dies, I'll have to live with that too, I said, pen in hand. But at least I'll know I fought for her. I signed my name on each line, my handwriting steady despite the gravity of what I was doing. With each signature, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders, but also something else, the certainty that I was doing what Grandma Dorothy would want me to do. There, I said, handing the clipboard back to Dr. Williams. When will the surgery begin? Within the next 30 minutes. The procedure could take anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, depending on what we find. I'll update you regularly. After Dr. Williams left, the three of us sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, my mother spoke. I hope you know what you've done. I do, I said quietly. I've given the woman who raised me a chance to live. And if she doesn't survive? I looked at both of them, these people who had given me life but never really knew how to love me. Then at least she'll know that someone fought for her until the very end. We returned to Grandma Dorothy's room to find the medical team preparing to move her to surgery. She looked so peaceful, so small on the gurney surrounded by machines and 4 poles. I walked over and took her hand one more time. I love you, Grandma, I whispered. Come back to me, okay? As they wheeled her away, I felt my parents standing behind me, but for the first time in my life, their presence didn't diminish my confidence in my own choices. Whatever happened next, I had honored the trust Grandma Dorothy had placed in me. The surgical waiting area was a study in institutional beige, filled with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. There were other families there, all dealing with their own crises, their own fears. I found a spot near the window where I could watch the sun beginning to rise over the city. My parents sat across the room from me, whispering between themselves occasionally but mostly just staring at their phones. The distance between us felt both physical and metaphorical, a chasm that had been years in the making. About an hour into the wait, a woman around my age approached me. She was wearing scrubs and had the kind of tired eyes that come from working too many consecutive shifts. Are you Jordan Miller? She asked. Yes. I'm Jessica, one of the surgical nurses. Dr. Williams asked me to give you an update. The surgery is progressing well. They found the blockage and they're working on clearing it now. So far, Dorothy's vital signs are stable. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. How much longer? Probably another 2 to 3 hours. Dr. Williams will come talk to you personally when it's finished. After Jessica left, I noticed my parents watching me intently. My mother got up and walked over. What did she say? I told her about the update and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Relief, maybe, or just surprise that things were going well. Jordan, she said, sitting down next to me for the first time all night. I want you to understand something. Your father and I, we weren't trying to be cruel earlier. We were trying to protect everyone from false hope. False hope. We've seen what these situations can do to families. The prolonged suffering, the medical bills, the emotional toll. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let go gracefully. I studied her face, trying to read the emotions beneath her controlled expression. And sometimes the kindest thing is to fight. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, when did you become so sure of yourself? The question caught me off guard. When had I become sure of myself? Was I sure of myself, or was I just desperate not to lose the one person who had always believed in me? I don't know if I am sure, I admitted. But I know that Grandma Dorothy deserves someone in her corner who's willing to take risks for her. She's taken risks for me my whole life. What do you mean? I thought about all the ways Grandma Dorothy had gone against my parents' wishes to support me. The time she secretly helped me apply for financial aid when they threatened to cut me off. The way she attended every school play and art show even when my parents said it was a waste of time. The countless conversations where she listened to my dreams without trying to change them. She always chose to believe in me when it would have been easier not to, I said finally. My mother nodded slowly, and for the first time in years she looked at me like she was actually seeing me rather than just evaluating me. Your grandmother loves you very much, she said quietly. I know. And I love her. We sat together in companionable silence for a while, watching the city wake up outside the window. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was a moment of understanding, and that felt like something. Around 9 a.m., Dr. Williams appeared in the waiting room, still in her surgical scrubs. Her expression was serious but not grim, and I felt my heart rate spike as she approached. The surgery went very well, she said, and I felt my knees go weak with relief. We were able to clear the blockage and restore blood flow to her heart. Dorothy's vital signs remained stable throughout the procedure. She's going to be okay? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. She's not out of the woods yet. The next 48 hours are critical, and recovery at her age will be challenging. But Jordan, she fought hard in there. Her heart is stronger than we expected. I looked over at my parents, who were listening intently to every word. Can I see her? She's in the cardiac ICU now. She'll be unconscious for several more hours while the anesthesia wears off, but you can sit with her. Family members can visit 2 at a time. As we walked toward the ICU, I realized that in the space of one night, everything had changed. I had made a decision that could have gone horribly wrong, but it hadn't. Grandma Dorothy was alive, and for the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my parents and won. But more than that, I had discovered something about myself that I hadn't known was there. The courage to fight for what mattered, even when the outcome was uncertain. The cardiac ICU was a maze of beeping machines, soft lighting, and hushed conversations between medical staff. Grandma Dorothy's room was the third one down the hall, and through the glass partition, I could see her small form connected to what seemed like dozens of wires and tubes. A ventilator helped her breathe, and multiple monitors tracked every aspect of her recovery. She looks peaceful, Dr. Williams said as we approached the bed. The surgery went better than we hoped. We found that despite her age, her heart muscle is remarkably strong. That's probably what saved her life. I pulled a chair up next to the bed and took her hand. Her skin felt warmer than it had hours earlier, and I could see color returning to her cheeks. How long before we know if the surgery was successful? We'll monitor her closely for the next 72 hours. If she remains stable, we can start talking about recovery and rehabilitation. But Jordan, I need you to understand that even if everything goes perfectly, she's facing weeks of recovery. It will be difficult. I nodded, settling into the chair. I'll be here. The ICU has visiting hours. You can't stay around the clock. Then I'll be here during every visiting hour. Dr. Williams smiled. I thought you might say that. The nursing staff will take good care of her, I promise. After she left, I sat alone with Grandma Dorothy, listening to the steady rhythm of the machines that were helping keep her alive. It was strangely comforting, those electronic sounds that meant her heart was beating, her lungs were working, her body was fighting to heal itself. I did it, Grandma, I whispered. I stood up to them. I made the decision you would have wanted me to make. Around noon, my parents appeared in the doorway. They looked older somehow, worn down by the events of the night and the reality of what lay ahead. How is she? My mother asked. Stable. The surgery was successful. My father approached the bed cautiously as if he was afraid to get too close. She's so small, he said, and there was something in his voice I'd rarely heard, vulnerability. She's always been small, I said. But she's tougher than she looks. We spent the afternoon taking turns sitting with her, the tension from earlier replaced by a kind of exhausted détente. Nobody had the energy for conflict anymore, and Grandma Dorothy's presence, even unconscious, seemed to demand better from all of us. Around 4 p.m., her fingers moved slightly in mine. I called for the nurse, who checked her monitors and pupils. She's starting to wake up, Nurse Patricia explained. It's normal for patients to drift in and out of consciousness for the first day or two after surgery. Talk to her. She can probably hear you even if she can't respond yet. I leaned closer to the bed. Grandma, it's Jordan. You're in the hospital, but you're okay. The surgery went perfectly. You're going to be fine. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused but aware. She tried to speak around the breathing tube, and the nurse quickly explained that she wouldn't be able to talk until it was removed. Don't try to talk, I said. Just squeeze my hand if you can hear me. A weak but definite pressure against my palm. She was there, she was aware, she was fighting. Over the next 2 days, Grandma Dorothy's condition steadily improved. The breathing tube was removed on Thursday morning, and her first words were characteristically practical. Water, she croaked, her voice rough from the tube. I helped her take small sips from a straw, and she looked around the ICU with alert, curious eyes. Jordan, she said, her voice getting stronger. What happened? I remember chest pain, then nothing. I explained about the heart attack, the emergency surgery, the successful outcome. She listened carefully, asking questions about her prognosis and recovery timeline with the same sharp intelligence that had always impressed me. And your parents? She asked. I glanced toward the waiting area where they had been maintaining their vigil. They're here. Good. This family needs to heal more than just my heart. By Friday, she was stable enough to move to a regular cardiac unit room, and the difference was dramatic. Instead of the intensive monitoring of the ICU, she had a private room with a window overlooking the hospital's garden. She was sitting up in bed when I arrived that morning, looking more like herself despite the hospital gown and lingering pallor. Tell me about the surgery, she said without preamble. I want to know everything. I told her about Dr. Williams, about the successful procedure, about the long hours of waiting. But I hesitated when it came to the conflict with my parents. Jordan, she said gently, what aren't you telling me? So I told her everything. About their opposition to the surgery, about their suggestion that comfort care would be more appropriate, about the moment when I learned I was her power of attorney, and about standing up to them for the first time in my adult life. She listened without interruption, her face thoughtful. You made the right choice, she said finally. Not just about the surgery but about standing up for what you believed in. I was terrified I was making a mistake. Of course you were. All the important decisions in life are terrifying. But you didn't let fear paralyze you. Mom and Dad think I was selfish, that I couldn't let you go. Grandma Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the garden below. Jordan, do you know why I made you my power of attorney? I wondered about that. It wasn't because I didn't trust your parents. It was because I knew that when the time came, you would make decisions based on love, not fear or convenience or social expectations. You would fight for what I would want, not what would be easiest for everyone else. How did you know I would want you to have the surgery? She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her since before the heart attack. Because 3 weeks ago, when I mentioned that I was thinking about updating my will, you told me I wasn't allowed to die for at least another 20 years. You said you had too many things you still wanted to share with me. I remembered that conversation. We had been walking through Lincoln Park, feeding the ducks and talking about her plans for the upcoming holidays. I meant it, I said. I know you did. And that's why I knew you would give me the chance to fight for those 20 years. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Dr. Williams stopped by during her rounds, but instead of the quick check-in I expected, she pulled up a chair. Dorothy, I wanted to talk to you about something. Your recovery has been remarkable, but I think part of that success comes from having someone who advocated so strongly for your care. Grandma Dorothy looked at me with pride. He's always been my fighter. The thing is, Dr. Williams continued, not every patient has someone like Jordan in their corner. We see too many elderly patients who don't have strong advocates, and their outcomes are often much worse as a result. What are you suggesting? I asked. The hospital is starting a new patient advocacy program. We're looking for people with the right combination of compassion, communication skills, and willingness to fight for patients who might not have anyone else to fight for them. I think you'd be excellent at it. The idea intrigued me. In my current job at the Family Services Agency, I help people navigate complex systems all the time, but this would be more direct, more immediate. Would it be compatible with my current work schedule? We're looking at it as a part-time consulting position initially. Training would be provided, and you'd work with our social work department to help families make informed decisions about care options. I looked at Grandma Dorothy, who was beaming. What do you think? I think it sounds like exactly the kind of work you were meant to do. Over the weekend, my parents' behavior began to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. Instead of their usual rushed visits filled with awkward small talk, they started spending longer periods with Grandma Dorothy, actually listening to her stories and asking about her life. On Saturday afternoon, I found my mother helping Grandma Dorothy with her physical therapy exercises, something I never would have imagined her doing. The therapist said these arm movements will help prevent blood clots, my mother was explaining, guiding Grandma Dorothy through the motions with surprising gentleness. Patricia, Grandma Dorothy said, thank you for being here. Of course I'm here. Your family. It was such a simple statement, but hearing my mother say it with genuine warmth instead of obligation felt like a small miracle. That evening, after visiting hours ended, my parents and I found ourselves in the hospital cafeteria together, sharing what had become our routine dinner of questionable sandwiches and coffee. Jordan, my father said, setting down his coffee cup, I owe you an apology. I looked up, surprised. Apologies were not part of my father's usual vocabulary. I was wrong the other night. About calling you useless, about questioning your judgment, about trying to override your decision. You made the right call, and Dorothy is alive because of it. More than that, my mother added, you've been here every day managing her care, coordinating with the doctors, handling all the details we should have been handling. You've been the son we should have been. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with years of misunderstanding and missed connections. I just did what I thought she would want, I said. That's exactly my point, my father replied. You knew what she would want because you actually know her. You spend time with her, you listen to her, you care about her happiness, not just her health or her finances or her legal affairs. We've been terrible at that, my mother said quietly. We've been terrible at a lot of things when it comes to family. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement, and that felt like the beginning of something better. By the end of her first week in the hospital, Grandma Dorothy was walking short distances with a walker. Her color was good and her spirits were high. Dr. Williams was optimistic about her continued recovery, though she emphasized that it would take months to fully heal. The good news, she told us during Monday morning rounds, is that Dorothy's heart function has actually improved since the surgery. The restored blood flow has allowed the muscle to start healing from the damage caused by the heart attack. What about going home? Grandma Dorothy asked. Not for another week or two. Then you'll need several weeks of cardiac rehabilitation. But Dorothy, I'm optimistic that you'll be able to return to independent living with some modifications. What kind of modifications? I asked. A cardiac rehabilitation program 3 times a week for about 12 weeks. Some changes to her diet and exercise routine. Regular follow-up appointments. And most importantly, a strong support system at home. I looked at Grandma Dorothy, who was already planning her return to her little apartment with its balcony garden and her book club meetings. She'll have that, I said firmly. Whatever she needs. That afternoon, as I was reviewing discharge planning information with the hospital social worker, my phone buzzed with a text from my supervisor at the Family Services Agency. Heard through the grapevine about the hospital advocacy position. If you're interested, I think it could be a great fit with your current caseload. Let's talk when you're ready. I smiled, thinking about how Grandma Dorothy always said that life has a way of opening new doors just when you're ready to walk through them. 3 weeks after the surgery, Grandma Dorothy was finally ready to go home. The morning of her discharge, I arrived at the hospital to find her dressed in her own clothes for the first time since the night she was admitted, sitting in the chair by the window with her small suitcase packed and ready. I never thought I'd be so excited to see my own apartment again, she said, practically glowing with anticipation. Dr. Williams arrived with the final discharge papers and a comprehensive list of instructions for her recovery. Dorothy, you've been a model patient. Your recovery has exceeded all our expectations. I had good motivation, Grandma Dorothy replied, glancing at me with a smile. The cardiac rehabilitation program starts next Monday. It's 3 days a week for 12 weeks, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is for your continued recovery. The exercises will help strengthen your heart and improve your stamina. I'll make sure she gets there, I said. Actually, Jordan, I've arranged for transportation through the hospital's patient services program. You don't need to rearrange your work schedule 3 times a week. But I shook my head. I want to be there. At least for the first few sessions. Over the past 3 weeks, I had come to understand something important about caregiving and support. It wasn't just about the big dramatic moments, like signing surgery consent forms or making life or death decisions. It was about showing up consistently for the small, everyday challenges that mattered just as much. The ride to her apartment was quiet, both of us lost in thought as we drove through the familiar neighborhoods of her North Side community. When we pulled up to her building, I could see her face light up at the sight of home. Mrs. Miller. Her neighbor, an elderly man named Frank who lived across the hall, was waiting by the entrance with a small bouquet of flowers from the building's garden. "We've all been so worried about you. Frank, you sweet man. How did you know I was coming home today? Jordan called me yesterday to let me know. The whole building has been asking about you." As we made our way up to her third-floor apartment, neighbors kept appearing in doorways to welcome her back. Mrs. Chin from 3B had made soup. The young couple in 3D had picked up her mail and watered her plants. The building superintendent had arranged for her apartment to be cleaned while she was in the hospital. "I had no idea so many people cared," Grandma Dorothy whispered to me as we unlocked her door. "You've lived here for 15 years. You're part of this community." Her apartment looked exactly the same but somehow different too. The African violets on her balcony were thriving under her neighbor's care, and there were get well cards covering her kitchen table. It smelled like home, the lavender sachets she kept in her linen closet, the vanilla candles she loved, and faintly of the chocolate chip cookies she had been planning to make the day she had the heart attack. "It's good to be back," she said, settling into her favorite armchair by the window. Over the next few hours, I helped her organize her medications, reviewed her dietary restrictions, and programmed important phone numbers into her cell phone. The Cardiac Rehabilitation Center, my number, my parents' number, her primary care doctor, and 911 were all now easily accessible. "Jordan," she said as we were finishing up, "I need to tell you something." "What's that?" "The night before my heart attack, I had been thinking about calling you. I was feeling more tired than usual, and I had this strange discomfort in my chest. But I didn't want to bother you." My heart sank. "Grandma, you could never bother me. Why didn't you call?" "Because I've spent my whole life taking care of other people. It's hard to admit when you need help yourself. But I'm not other people. I'm your grandson who loves you more than anything. I know that now. And I promise from now on, if something doesn't feel right, I'll call you immediately." That evening, I made dinner for both of us in her small kitchen. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and vegetables according to her new heart-healthy diet plan, but it felt significant somehow. We were establishing a new routine, a new way of being family that acknowledged her need for independence while ensuring she had support when she needed it. "How are things with your parents?" she asked as we ate. "Different. Better, I think. They've been calling me regularly to check on your progress. Dad even asked my opinion about some modifications they want to make to their guest room to make it more accessible if you ever want to visit." "And how do you feel about that?" I considered the question. Cautious but hopeful. "I think seeing you in the hospital made them realize how much they've been missing. Not just with you but with me too. People sometimes need a crisis to show them what really matters." "Is that why you made me your power of attorney? Did you know something like this might happen?" Grandma Dorothy was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I made you my power of attorney because I trusted you to make decisions based on love rather than fear or convenience. But Jordan, I also did it because I wanted you to know how much I believe in you." "What do you mean?" "For too long you've let your parents' criticism make you doubt yourself. But you're strong, compassionate, intelligent, and capable of handling difficult situations with grace. I wanted to give you a chance to see that in yourself. Even if it meant risking your life? Especially then. Because love isn't about playing it safe. Love is about trusting the people who matter most to make the right choices, even when the stakes are high." The next morning brought the first cardiac rehabilitation session. The facility was bright and modern, with specialized exercise equipment designed for heart patients. Grandma Dorothy was nervous but excited as we checked in. "Good morning, Dorothy." The program coordinator, an energetic woman named Lisa, greeted us warmly. "Ready to start your journey back to full health?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The session included about a dozen other patients, ranging in age from their 50s to their 80s, all working on recovery from various heart conditions. The exercises were gentle but purposeful, walking on treadmills at carefully monitored speeds, light weights, stretching, and education about heart-healthy living. I watched from the observation area as Grandma Dorothy dove into the program with determination. She introduced herself to other patients, asked questions about the equipment, and followed every instruction with the kind of focused attention she had always brought to new challenges. "She's doing great," Lisa told me after the session. "Her attitude is excellent, and her baseline fitness is better than we expected for someone who just had major cardiac surgery. She's always been tough. It shows. But Jordan, I want you to know that having family support like yours makes a huge difference in patient outcomes. Not everyone has someone who cares enough to be here for these sessions." As the weeks passed, Grandma Dorothy's strength and stamina improved dramatically. The cardiac rehabilitation program became a highlight of her week, and she formed friendships with several other patients. Her apartment filled with new recipes for heart-healthy meals, exercise logs tracking her progress, and photos from the social activities she was participating in at the community center. 6 weeks after her discharge from the hospital, I got a call that surprised me. "Jordan, it's your mother. Are you free for lunch today? Your father and I would like to talk to you." We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, and I could tell immediately that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. My parents had the serious, purposeful demeanor they wore when they were about to discuss something important. "Jordan," my father began after we had ordered, "we've been doing a lot of thinking over the past couple of months. About family, about priorities, about the things we've done wrong. We want to try to rebuild our relationship with you," my mother added. "But we realize that has to start with acknowledging how badly we've handled things in the past." "What brought this on?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Watching you with your grandmother," my father said. "Watching you make difficult decisions with such maturity and compassion. Seeing how much she trusts and depends on you. We realize that we've been missing out on knowing the remarkable person you've become. We were so focused on trying to shape you into what we thought you should be that we never took the time to appreciate who you actually are," my mother said. It was the kind of conversation I had dreamed of having with them for years, but now that it was happening, I felt more cautious than excited. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "But words are easy. How do I know this isn't just guilt over what happened with Grandma Dorothy?" "You don't," my father admitted. "You have every right to be skeptical. But we're hoping you'll give us a chance to prove that we mean it." Over the next hour, they outlined their thoughts about how we might begin to repair our relationship. Regular family dinners. Genuine interest in my work and my life. Support for my decisions even when they didn't understand them. Most importantly, respect for the person I had chosen to become instead of constant pressure to be someone else. "There's something else," my mother said as lunch was ending. "We've been talking about selling the big house in Milwaukee. It's too much space for just the two of us, and honestly, it's too far away from the people who matter." "You're moving?" "We're thinking about it. There are some lovely condos in your grandmother's neighborhood. We thought it might be nice to be closer to family." The idea of my parents living in the same neighborhood as Grandma Dorothy and me was both appealing and terrifying. But maybe that was what real change felt like, scary and hopeful at the same time. 3 months after Grandma Dorothy's heart attack, I officially accepted the patient advocacy position at the hospital. My first case was an elderly man with no family who needed someone to help him understand his treatment options for pancreatic cancer. As I sat with him in the same consultation room where Dr. Williams had told me about Grandma Dorothy's surgery, I felt the weight of responsibility that came with advocating for someone who had no one else to fight for them. "What would you do if this was your grandfather?" he asked me. It was the same question I had asked myself that night in the emergency room. "I would make sure you understood all your options, and then I would support whatever decision felt right to you. Even if it wasn't what the doctors recommended? Even then. Because ultimately this is your life and your choice." By the time Grandma Dorothy completed her cardiac rehabilitation program, she was in better shape than she had been before her heart attack. Her energy was higher, her diet was healthier, and she had a new sense of confidence in her body's ability to heal and stay strong. "I want to celebrate," she announced the day she graduated from the program. "All of us together." "All of us?" I asked. "You, me, and your parents. It's time for this family to have dinner together." The dinner took place at Grandma Dorothy's apartment on a warm Saturday evening in late spring. My parents arrived with flowers and a homemade dessert that met all of her dietary restrictions, something I never would have expected from them 6 months earlier. As we sat around her small dining table, sharing stories and laughing together, I realized that we had all been changed by the events that began with that terrifying phone call at 2:17 a.m. Grandma Dorothy had survived and thrived. My parents had learned to see past their own expectations to appreciate the people right in front of them. And I had discovered that I was capable of making difficult decisions with confidence and compassion. "Jordan," Grandma Dorothy said as we were cleaning up after dinner, "do you remember what you told me that day in the park about not being allowed to die for 20 years? "I remember." "Well, after everything we've been through, I'm thinking 20 years might not be enough. I might need at least 30. I hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender perfume and feeling the steady, strong beat of her repaired heart against my chest. 30 years it is," I said. "But I'm going to hold you to that." As my parents and I walked to our cars after dinner, my mother linked her arm through mine. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For fighting for her when we couldn't." For being the person we should have raised you to be, despite our mistakes. For giving us a chance to do better. Looking back, I realized that the moment Dr. Williams told me I was the only one who could authorize Grandma Dorothy's treatment wasn't just about medical decision-making. It was about stepping into the person I had always had the potential to be, but had been too afraid or too discouraged to become. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives don't announce themselves with fanfare. They arrive at 2:17 a.m. with a phone call that changes everything, forcing us to discover strength we didn't know we had and to fight for love in ways we never imagined we could. 6 months later, when Grandma Dorothy called me at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, my heart didn't race with panic. Instead, I smiled before I even answered the phone. "Jordan, dear, I'm calling because I promised I would never hesitate to ask for help when I need it." "What do you need?" "I'm trying to hang new curtains in my bedroom and I can't reach the curtain rod. Could you possibly come over this weekend to help me?" "Of course. But Grandma?" "Yes. I'm proud of you for calling." "I'm proud of me too," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "See you Saturday." As I hung up the phone, I realized that we had all learned something valuable from that terrifying night in the emergency room. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not trying to protect the people we care about from all risk, but trusting them enough to let them fight for the life they want to live. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to stand up for what matters most, we discover that we're much stronger than we ever believed possible.